I've been hauling freight most of my adult life, and over the years I've seen plenty of strange things on the highway. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever compared to what happened one night out on a back road in Nebraska. I was 38 at the time, and it was 2011. The route was routine, but the hours weren't. I was moving a load past midnight, down a stretch of two-lane road, cutting through farmland that seemed to stretch forever. No lights, no towns, just a long black ribbon disappearing into the horizon. Nights like that always had a way of messing with my head, making me feel like I was driving into nothingness. It started with the fog. First a light haze, then thicker, and thicker still, until my high beams were just a white wall reflecting back at me. I eased off the gas, crawling forward, debating whether I should pull onto the shoulder. But the road was dead empty, and I figured if I just kept it slow, I'd be fine. Then came the smell. It wasn't just bad, it was overwhelming. A stench so vile it burned my nose, like rotten meat left in the sun, mixed with chemicals, sewage, and something I can't even describe. It coated my throat, made my stomach lurch. I rolled the windows up, but the smell was already inside, thick as the fog. I gagged, coughing so hard my eyes watered, and before I knew it, I was pulling over. I swung the door open and leaned out, emptying my stomach onto the gravel shoulder. The air outside was no better. It clung to me, filled my lungs, made me dizzy. When I finally climbed back in and wiped my mouth, I saw it. A figure crossing the road. At first, I thought it was just a guy, some farmer out too late. He moved slow, limping, his steps uneven. The man wore a dirt-stained white shirt with black, suspenders hanging loose at his sides, like clothes from 100 years ago. He didn't turn his head, didn't react to my idling truck. He just dragged himself across the pavement and disappeared into the fog. I sat there frozen, watching the dark. And then more figures came. 4 of them, stepping out of the field as if on cue, each one walking the same broken limp, each one in the same old-fashioned clothes, their faces hidden in shadow. They crossed single file, slow and silent, until they vanished like the first. I gripped the wheel, heart thudding, every instinct telling me to throw the rig in gear and get the hell out of there. But I didn't. I just sat, staring into the fog. And that's when the last one came. Smaller. A boy. No older than 8 or 9, shuffling with his head low. He wore a tattered, button-up shirt and suspenders that hung crooked on his small frame. His bare feet dragged against the asphalt, toes scraping. I opened the door just enough to lean out, my voice shaking. "Hey kid, do you need help?" That's when he stopped. His head turned toward me. Not fast, too slow. His neck seemed to creak with the movement, his chin dragging until his face came into view, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't a child's face. The skin was sunken and gray, stretched tight across bone. His eyes were gone, nothing but black pits. His lips were peeled back, cracked and rotting, showing jagged teeth the color of tar. For a moment, all I could do was stare, and then it opened its mouth. The sound that came out wasn't human. A shriek so sharp and high it rattled my skull, echoed through my chest, froze me in place. And then it moved, faster than before, hobbling straight toward me with arms twitching, reaching. Behind him, shapes emerged from the fog. More of them, dozens, all of them screaming, all of them limping and lurching toward the truck. My body finally snapped into motion. I slammed the door shut, stomped the accelerator, and the truck roared as I swerved around the boy. My tires caught the gravel, and for a split second, I thought I'd jackknife. But somehow I straightened out and shot down the road. Heart pounding so loud it drowned out the engine. In the mirrors, I saw them, pale faces lit by my brake lights, mouths open in endless screams, their twisted bodies stumbling after me. And then the fog swallowed them, and they were gone. I didn't stop again until I hit the lights of a gas station an hour later. I parked crooked, hands trembling on the wheel, too scared to even get out. I just sat there breathing hard, smelling the stench that still clung to my clothes. Even now, years later, I can see those faces when I close my eyes. And sometimes when the road is empty and the fog rolls in thick, I swear I smell it again, that same rot crawling into my lungs, pulling me back to that night when I learned the highway doesn't always belong to the living. I was 29 when this happened. I'd been running trucks for a few years already, hauling wrecks, doing long nights that never seemed to end. You get used to silence out on the road. You get used to being alone, but this night was different. This night made me realize there are things out here that don't belong to us. It was late, just past midnight, when I started my climb up Sewell Mountain in West Virginia. That road is dangerous enough in the daytime, twisting curves, steep drops, guardrails that look like they'd fold under the weight of a bicycle, let alone a semi. At night, it feels like you're threading a needle blind. I remember the fog first. It didn't just roll in. It poured down the mountain, thick enough that my high beams only lit up a wall of white. The road was slick, the trees pressed in close, and every turn felt like it might be my last. My eyelids were heavy, my neck sore from hours on the wheel. I kept sipping stale coffee, hoping it'd keep me sharp, but it wasn't working. Then she appeared. 1 second, the road was empty. The next, she was standing right in front of me. A woman. She stepped straight into my lane like she was waiting for me. Her dress was long, white, flowing in the fog like it was underwater. Her skin looked pale against the darkness, and her hair hung in dark strands around her shoulders. I froze, then instinct kicked in. I slammed the brakes hard. The trailer rocked and the tires screamed, the whole rig lurching forward as I gripped the wheel with both hands, praying I wouldn't roll over. When the truck finally shuddered to a stop, I sat there shaking, convinced I'd just killed her. I yanked the brake, tore my seatbelt off, and climbed down. The night air was biting cold. The only sound was the tick of my cooling engine and the hiss of the brakes. I swept my flashlight across the road, heart hammering, waiting to see her body twisted in the pavement. But there was nothing. No woman, no body, not even a footprint in the gravel. The fog drifted over the asphalt, silent, thick, like it had swallowed her whole. I checked under the bumper, under the cab, even walked 50 feet up the road with the flashlight. The woods were so quiet it made my ears ring. It felt wrong, like something was holding its breath, watching me. I hurried back into the cab, slammed the door, and sat there gripping the wheel. My heart wouldn't slow down. I told myself I'd imagined it. I told myself it was exhaustion, a hallucination, my brain playing tricks on me after too many hours awake. And then, as I eased the truck forward again, I saw her, farther down the road, standing at the tree line. This time, she wasn't in the middle of the asphalt. She stood with her back to me, her dress glowing in my headlights. The fog curled around her ankles like smoke. I slowed to a crawl, every nerve screaming at me to keep going. That's when she turned. Her head moved slow, almost mechanical, like her neck was stiff. And when her face came into view, I felt ice crawl through my veins. Her skin was pale, too pale, her eyes hollow, shadowed. Her lips pressed into the faintest, saddest line, but she didn't open her mouth. She just looked at me. And in that stare, I felt something I can't describe. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even pain. It was emptiness. Like looking into someone who wasn't alive anymore. I hit the gas and tore past her, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I didn't check the mirrors. I didn't dare. By the time I reached the bottom of the mountain, I was drenched in sweat. I pulled into the first gas station I found and just sat there for a long time, staring at the dashboard, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. But I know what I saw. When I told a friend about it a few days later, one who lived near the mountain, he went pale. He didn't laugh, didn't tell me I was tired. He told me about a woman murdered on Sewell Mountain back in the 70s. Brutally stabbed, left to die in the ditch wearing the same white dress I'd described. Since then, he said, people had seen her. Truckers, locals, travelers passing through. Always at night, always in the fog. Some say she's there to warn tired drivers, to jolt them awake before they run off the road. Others say she's just stuck, repeating the last night of her life over and over. But I'll tell you this, when her face turned into my headlights, there wasn't a shred of mercy in her eyes. It wasn't the look of someone trying to save me. It was the look of someone trying to pull me with her, and I'll never drive that mountain at night again. I've been behind the wheel most of my life. Long-haul routes, coast to coast, weeks at a time on the road. You learn to handle exhaustion. You learn to live with silence. But what I couldn't handle, what I still can't explain, are the nightmares. They didn't come all at once. At first, it was one or two strange dreams, the kind you can shake off with a strong coffee. But then they kept coming, night after night, growing sharper, heavier, until I couldn't tell where the dreams ended and where the waking world began. The first time, I dreamed I was driving my own rig down an empty two-lane. No cars, no lights, Just black sky and the white stripes flashing beneath me. Everything felt real, the rumble of the tires, the hum of the engine. Then, without warning, the radio died, the lights flickered, and I saw them. Figures, dozens of them. They lined the roadside, shoulder to shoulder, pale as bone, staring straight at me, not moving, not blinking, just watching as I passed. Their heads didn't turn, their eyes didn't follow, but somehow I knew they saw me. I knew they were waiting. I woke up choking on my own breath, drenched in sweat. For hours, I couldn't close my eyes. I was convinced they'd still be there when I did. The next dream was worse. I was climbing a grade through heavy fog. Couldn't see the hood of the truck. Couldn't see the lines on the road. When the fog finally cleared, I realized I wasn't on a mountain highway at all. I was on a bridge, high above a black void that stretched forever. The guardrails were gone. The asphalt just hung there in the air, crumbling at the edges. I slammed the brakes, fought the wheel, but the truck wouldn't stop. It just kept rolling forward, inch by inch, toward the edge of nothing. Right before the cab tipped forward, I woke up, screaming so hard my throat ached. But the worst came later. In this dream, I wasn't driving. I was parked. The rig sat on the shoulder of some nameless road, headlights glowing weak through the trees. Everything was silent. Too silent. Like the whole world was holding its breath. Then I saw her. A woman standing in the woods just beyond the light. Skin pale, dress torn and stained. Her hair hung in long strands that clung to her face. She lifted her arm slowly and pointed straight at me. I wanted to move, to start the engine, to get out of there. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. All I could do was watch as she stepped closer. Her movements were wrong. Jerky, broken, like her bones didn't fit inside her skin. She dragged herself forward until she was at my door. Her face pressed to the glass, so close I could see the cracks in her lips, the hollow rings under her eyes. Then she opened her mouth. No words came out, just a sound so sharp, so piercing, it felt like it drilled straight into my skull. The glass rattled in the frame. My chest locked up. I thought my heart would explode. That's when I woke. My ears were still ringing. My chest hurt like I'd been screaming in real life, and the nightmares didn't stop. Night after night, they clawed their way back. I started fighting sleep, forcing myself to stay awake as long as possible. Coffee, energy drinks, anything to keep my eyes open. But you can't run forever. Sleep always wins. And every time it did, she came back. Then came the night in Kentucky. I'd pulled into a truck stop, parked under the lights, locked the doors. I told myself I was safe. Just a quick nap before I hit the road again. I closed my eyes for maybe 15 minutes. Just 15 minutes. When I woke, the cab was silent. Too silent. My chest was tight, my skin clammy. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and froze. On the inside of the windshield, right above the steering wheel, were smudges, fingerprints, small, pressed against the glass, like someone had been leaning there watching me sleep. I don't know what these nightmares are. I don't know if they're dreams at all anymore, because sometimes when the road is dark and the cab is quiet, I feel it, that weight, that presence, like she's still riding with me, waiting for the moment I finally close my eyes for good. And maybe when that happens, I won't wake up again. It was 2 a.m, and I was deep in the Arizona desert, hauling freight through one of those endless stretches of blacktop where the road runs straight for miles. No cars, no towns, no headlights in the mirrors, just sand, brush, and sky. The kind of silence that presses against the glass, heavy, like the world itself has gone still. I'd been driving for hours. The cab lights were dim, the radio was static, the hum of the tires the only sound left keeping me awake. My eyes burned, my hands ached from the wheel, but I remember that stretch clearer than anything else, because that was the night I saw him. At first, he was nothing but a shadow, something standing in the reach of my headlights. I thought it might be a coyote or a deer frozen in the road, but as I drew closer, my stomach tightened. It wasn't an animal. It was a man. He stood on the shoulder, his back to me, staring into the desert. No flashlight, no bag, no car anywhere in sight. Just standing there like he'd been planted in the dirt. His clothes looked old, torn at the seams, coated in dust like they hadn't been washed in decades. He didn't move when my rig bore down on him. Didn't even flinch when 40 tons of steel passed a few feet away. He just stood there, frozen, watching the sand. I gripped the wheel tighter, every instinct in me screaming not to stop. Something about him was wrong, deeply wrong, but I told myself it was nothing. Just some drifter, just exhaustion. I kept driving. A mile later, I checked my mirrors, and my blood ran cold. He wasn't behind me. He was ahead. Same man, same clothes, same posture, standing on the shoulder like he'd never moved. My breath caught in my throat. My foot hovered over the brake, but I didn't dare slow down. I told myself I'd imagined it. I told myself I was tired. But as I drew closer, there he was again. Same torn shirt, same stillness, same silence. I passed him a second time, then a third, and a fourth. Every mile, no matter how fast I drove, no matter how long I kept my eyes locked on the horizon, he was always there, sometimes on the right, sometimes the left, sometimes swaying slightly, like the wind was moving him, but always ahead, waiting. My knuckles went white on the wheel. I cranked the radio up just to drown out the sound of my own heartbeat. But it didn't help. With every mile, my chest grew tighter. The desert outside felt thicker, darker, as though the night itself was alive and watching. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I was barreling down the highway, pushing the engine harder than I should have. When I saw him, not on the shoulder this time, but in the middle of the lane, standing dead center, arms limp at his sides, head tilted like he was listening for something. His face was gray, slack, his eyes black pits reflecting the beams of my headlights. I blasted the horn, swerved hard enough to rattle the trailer, every muscle in my body screaming to keep the rig steady. The blast of air should have knocked him back. The grill should have hit him head on. But when I checked my mirrors, the road was empty. He was gone. By the time I reached the lights of the next town, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the truck on the pavement. I pulled into a diner lot, killed the engine, and just sat there in silence, my chest heaving, sweat soaking the back of my shirt. Inside, I slumped at the counter, ordered coffee I couldn't hold steady. The waitress saw me shaking, asked what was wrong. I didn't want to answer, but the words spilled out. I told her everything, and she didn't laugh. Her face went pale. She set the coffee pot down slow, leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You saw him, didn't you?" I couldn't even nod. She told me locals call him the hitchhiker, a man who died out there decades ago, hit by a truck while trying to flag someone down. Ever since, travelers have seen him, always standing on that highway, always waiting. Some say he's looking for a ride that never came. Others say he's stuck, tied to the place he died. But the way she spoke, the way her eyes kept darting to the window like she expected to see him standing there in the parking lot, I don't think she believed either of those. And neither do I, because when I left that diner, when I climbed back into my cab and pulled out onto the road, I felt it. That weight, that presence, like he was still there, like he'd never left. And I don't know how long he'll stay on the shoulder. I don't know when he'll finally decide to climb inside. I was parked at a rest stop in New Mexico the night it happened. One of those forgotten pull-offs on the highway, where the lamps are rusted and only half of them work, casting weak yellow light over cracked pavement and old oil stains. The kind of place where the air itself feels stale, like no one's been comfortable there in years. The vending machines rattled when the wind pushed through them, their glass fogged from age, and every sign was faded, words peeling away under layers of dust. I'd been on the road since sunrise, eyes burning, hands stiff from the wheel, and I told myself I needed 10 minutes to close my eyes before pushing on. I pulled in, killed the engine, leaned back in the cab with the lights off, and let the silence settle. The desert has its own kind of silence, thick and heavy, like the world just stops breathing. I could hear the wind scrape against the trailer, hear the tick of the cooling engine, hear the buzzing of the lamps, and for a while I almost drifted. Then I heard it, footsteps. Slow, steady, crunching on gravel, heavy like boots dragging over stone. My eyes snapped open. I pushed myself upright and checked the mirrors. But the lot looked empty. Just a couple of other trucks parked farther down. Their cabs dark, no doors open, no figures moving. I told myself it was nothing. Another driver stretching his legs, someone out for a smoke. But the sound didn't fade. It grew clearer. It circled around my truck, step by step, dragging, slow, deliberate. Not hurried, not casual. Like whoever it was wanted me to know they were there, wanted me to listen. My skin prickled. I flicked the dome light on, my heart hammering against my ribs, but the mirrors showed nothing. The sound didn't stop. It moved along the trailer. Down the driver's side, back again, gravel crunching with every step. And then it stopped right at the passenger side door. Silence. Then came the knock. 3 times. Slow. Hollow. A dull thud against the metal that rattled through the cab. Not loud, not sharp, soft, almost polite. And that's what made it worse. My breath hitched. My hand shot under the seat for the flashlight, and I snapped it on, aiming it at the glass. Nothing. No one there. I cracked the window an inch, just enough to call out, my voice trembling. "Who's there?" But the sound that came out of me didn't even sound like my own voice. It was thin, weak, like it was being swallowed by the dark. No answer. Just that silence, thick and pressing. I shut the window, slammed the lock down, killed the dome light, and sat in the dark, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached, telling myself it was a prank, some kid, some hitchhiker, someone screwing with me, but my gut knew better. Because then I heard it again. Breathing. Not mine, not in the cab. Outside, right outside the window. It was slow, shallow, raspy, like someone's face was inches from the glass, breathing me in. My whole body locked up. I didn't move, didn't even blink. Just sat there frozen, listening to the hiss of air from lungs I couldn't see. My chest felt like it was caving in, and then the glass fogged. A breath. A long, slow exhale spreading across the window like a pale stain. That broke me. I fired the engine, the cab roared to life, and I threw the truck into gear, slamming my foot down hard enough to make the tires shriek against the pavement. I tore out of that rest stop like I was being chased. Trailer rattling behind me. Hands slick with sweat, heart in my throat. I didn't stop, didn't look back. Just drove blind into the night until the glow of the next town broke the horizon. I pulled into a station with bright lights and people moving around. And only then did I let myself breathe, though my chest still felt tight. I told myself I was exhausted. Told myself I was imagining things. Told myself it was the dark playing tricks. But none of that explained how real it had felt. None of that explained the sound of footsteps circling me, or the fog on the glass inches from my face. And then came the part I can't forget. The next morning, after the sun had burned the desert clean again, after I'd convinced myself it was nothing more than nerves, I climbed out to check the rig. And there they were. On the passenger side door, smeared into the dust of the paint, handprints. Not one, not two, dozens. Small, pale, pressed so deep into the grime. It was like whoever had left them had been clawing to get inside. And some of those prints weren't where hands should have been. They were too high. Too high for any person to reach unless they were standing in the air itself. And that's when I realized I hadn't left anything behind at that rest stop. Something had followed me.